Ahoy! One of the things that was announced with Season 8 and with the Smite World Championships were the gods for 2021. HiRez made a teaser video like they did last year where they showed all the gods, only that this time they already revealed the first two gods completely. The first goddess will be Tiamat, who will be released in the next patch after the Season 8 launch, and then 2 patches later we'll get Gilgamesh. The rest of the gods, however, hasn't been specifically named, and instead we got a bunch of hints towards them. Now, if you're not that familiar with individual mythologies, then these can be hard to decipher. Fortunately, one of the people that is familiar with mythologies is Snufflebox. And Snufflebox reached out to me to work on this video together, so he provided a ton of information for this video and even wrote me a script. So huge thanks to him, and his links are all down below so you can check them out. What is worth noting about this lineup is that honestly most of the hints are a lot more obvious than they were last year, and it seems like the gods are more obvious choices as well. So I would say it's relatively likely that we can predict at least 3 out of 4 of the gods here correctly. There's a little hint from HiRez that technically speaks against that, but we'll get to that at the end. Let's first have a look at the first god trailer.
Amidst the fog of war, illusions manifest, their creator instilling her authority to any that are susceptible. What is the true threat? The war on the battleground, or the war of the mind?
So the first thing we notice here is that the character shown has a feminine figure, and she is referred to as a she. More specifically, Lore Lady says her authority. Behind the character we can see a pentagram, which means witchcraft or magical powers, and illusions are also specifically mentioned in the context of this character. Additionally, the words war of the mind are also used. And what we see on the right side of the trailer is a medieval castle, and that really narrows down our choices. Snufflebox prediction is as follows: Morgan Le Fay, or Morgana. Now, Morgan Le Fay, as many of you know, is the powerful enchantress or witch or sorceress from the Arthurian legend. She is sometimes, though not always, referred to as the half-sister of King Arthur himself and as the aunt of Mordred, Arthur's son. There are many clues here pointing towards her. The medieval castle in the background is a dead giveaway in itself, perhaps even portraying Camelot. The description given by Lore Lady also mentions illusions, which is said to be one of Morgan Le Fay's many powers. In addition to that, it's obviously also worth noting that Morgan Le Fay is a highly requested character. When the Arthurian pantheon was announced, it was basically the first character that was mentioned outside of the ones that were announced, so there's a good chance that this might happen. The next teaser is probably even more obvious and honestly strongly hints at one specific god, so let's have a look at that.
The stillness of the surface belies the horrors below, as the depths overwhelm, surround, engulf, and drown. What remains when humanity is monstrously distorted?
The first pointer that we get here is that this being lives below the surface of the ocean. Additionally, we have an image here that is kind of whirlpool-like, and is talk about it being overwhelming, surrounding, engulfing, and drowning, exactly as a whirlpool would do. We also see giant monster teeth and humanity monstrously distorted, which points towards a distorted monster of some sort. Snufflebox prediction for this one is Charybdis. As the counterpart of Scylla, Charybdis also originated from Homer's epic poem Odyssey, where she is said to be a giant monster living underwater, sucking in water every now and then, thus creating giant whirlpools, or being the giant whirlpool herself. The giant whirlpool image in the video is kinda on the nose on this one, and the monster teeth seem to point at the version that describes her as a monster creating the whirlpools. Her origin story also states that she was once human, who was turned into a hideous bladder of a monster as a punishment from the gods. The distortion mentioned in the video could point to her hideous outlook. And to add on to that, the part where it's mentioned that she is distorted from being a human before really solidifies it for me, since that is such a specific story aspect that everything else could kind of be ascribed to just any sea being to some degree, I suppose, just a scary sea being or something, but at the point where something was human and is then distorted, I'd say there isn't really a realistic other option. It's not quite that simple for the next god though.
The Emerald Isles darken as the Iberian forests shriek for life in their final throes. A vengeful spirit erupts, howling, leaving only death in her wake. And
so the first hint we get, once again, like with the first character, is that female pronouns are being used here, so it's another she. The second hint here is the location. The Emerald Isles and Hibernia are both different names for island, which means that this is with 99% certainty a Celtic god. In the image we see a forest covered in snow and the Aurora Borealis on top of a mountain range. There is a mention of a vengeful spirit and howling here, which could point towards a banshee, but not necessarily. Snufflebox suggests two options here. Cailleach, with a name that literally translates into old woman or hag in modern Irish and Scottish Gaelic, this creator and weather deity is credited as creating many of the mountains and hills in Ireland and Scotland, and is associated with winter and wilderness. These points line up perfectly with the snowy forest and mountain range seen in the teaser. Many mountains and cliffs are named after this deity, most of which are located in the northern counties of Ireland. And would anyone like to take a guess at what is the best location to see the Aurora Borealis in Ireland? To add on to Snufflebox speculation here, I also found that she is associated with storms sometimes, which could explain the howling aspect. There is, however, a second option. Cliodhna, the queen of the banshees. Snufflebox writes, honestly, not too many of these points can be associated with Cliodhna, but that a vengeful spirit howling part really made me think of a banshee, and I'd be damned if I didn't include their queen in this prediction. Most likely not going to be her, but if it is a banshee, I can't imagine anyone better than their queen to be added. And to add on to this a little bit myself as well, the location would match. Cliodhna is described as living in Ireland, but at the same time, she's not necessarily described as vengeful either. She actually even helps people sometimes. Obviously, there's always a lot of room for interpretation by HiRez, so we'll have to wait and see with this one. But I do get the impression that the Cailleach seems like the more likely option. And that brings us to the last one on the list.
as all threads are connected, so too are the heavens to the earth, eternally balanced by the carrier of the cosmos. Mortals, gods, titans.
So what we can see in this trailer is a figure holding something that looks like a celestial sphere, meaning that the sphere in the middle is either the Earth or the Sun, depending on which era of astronomy it is based on, and not Uranus as some people are guessing, due to one of the rings of the celestial sphere looking like the ring of the planet. It also seems that the figure holding the sphere is male, though we can't 100% confirm that. It just looks like that from the little glimpse that we see. There's a mention of heavens connected to the earth, quite possibly literally. So this carrier of the cosmos is connecting the two like a thread of sorts. Snufflebox's first suggestion here is Atlas. He writes, I mean, come on. This is pretty self-explanatory. If it isn't Atlas, I'll slap myself and post the video to Reddit. Atlas is a titan who was condemned to carry the celestial heavens for all of eternity after the titans were overthrown in the Greek mythology. Contrary to popular belief and depictions of later art pieces, Atlas is not actually carrying the entirety of Earth, but only the celestial heavens or sky depicted by a celestial sphere, which Atlas is also credited in inventing. The misconception comes from the necessity of sculptors depicting Atlas to make the celestial sphere solid due to it otherwise not being able to hold its own weight. Fun little bit of trivia, there is already a character named Atlas in Paladins, the hero shooter that is also made by HiRez. The character in that game is also hooded, so this could be a fun little reference to that. Technically, there is a second option, nude. Snuffle writes, to be honest, nothing really points towards nude except for the cosmos being depicted here. There is a possibility of it being her, since she is one of the most requested gods we added to the game, but it's not very likely. Now there's one thing that's a little weird that we've gone through all these gods. HiRez stated that the gods this year wouldn't be highly requested gods, and most of them would be rather underdog gods, and I don't really see that with this lineup. I think most of these gods were requested a decent amount of times at least, with the exception of maybe the Cailleach, if it's the Cailleach. And outside of that, I don't really see how these are the underdogs, how they put them basically. But maybe that just means that we don't have certain internal data that HiRez has and other gods were more requested, and that's why they don't consider them highly requested gods. I'm not sure, because they said that the year afterwards would be the year of highly requested gods. Again, thanks to Snufflebox for helping me out with this. His links are down below. And if you'd like to support me, you can do so by clicking the sub button, the bell, or maybe hopping over to my Patreon. Other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you for more Season 8 content very soon. SLOTH, out.